Okay, we're finally here. One of my most important videos throughout the entire NBA season, and that is who was the biggest surprise in this year, and it is easily, and I do mean easily, the Detroit Pistons. And the reason why this video is so important is because due to the lack of media coverage, many people have completely overlooked what this Pistons team has done, not just this year, but even towards the tail end of last year as well, in large part due to the amount of losing. I get that. Last year was a complete disaster class, only was able to accumulate 14 games in a win column, had the infamous losing streak that then resulted in them firing their first year head coach in Monty Williams. And so unfortunately what ended up happening is a lot of narrative propaganda that I believe was not accurate assessments of who that team was last year got labeled on a lot of those players out there in Detroit. And consequently, what ended up happening was a lot of growth from those young players as well that continued to be overlooked. And here we are now. And since the turn of the calendar year, they're still being overlooked. And I'm here to tell you right now, if you are a fan of an Eastern Conference team outside of the Celtics, I think the Celtics, they should be safe. But if you are a fan of an Eastern Conference team, I'm here to tell you, let this be your wake-up call, because even though Detroit has been a massive surprise throughout this regular season, they should not be a surprise on what I believe they're going to do in the postseason, because they have been really, really impressive. What exactly do I mean by this? As I record this video, the Pistons have a record of 42-33, a complete turnaround from where we were last year, literally 3 times as many wins from last year to where we are today. That's amazing. Offensive rating has been around league average, but defense is what they've really been able to hang their hat on. Top 10 status in the NBA, which has resulted in a net rating that has been around 10th or 11th. Now, that sounds like a team that has been meh, right? I mean, a good story, bounce back, really sounds cute and all, but why exactly am I overreacting to such an average looking team, right? Nothing really sticks out outside of maybe their defense. Well, the reason why is because a lot of the losses and a lot of what we're seeing from this team is not being accurately depicted because of how they started off this season. In the first couple of months, really before January 1st, the Pistons were still a losing franchise record-wise. However, since then to where we are now, things have completely changed. Since January 1st, the Pistons have a record of 28-15, which is the 5th best record in the NBA, an offensive rating of 116.8, which is 8th best in the NBA, and the 2nd best defense in the league with a defensive rating of 110, giving them a net rating of 6.6, which is still top 5 status. So this means Detroit, since the beginning of the year, has been a top 5 team in the NBA, and normally I use like 15 to 20 game sample size over here in my team, but I wanted to extend it to the beginning of the year so you all understand that this is not like a small sample size that we're overreacting to here. This is a legitimate sample size of wins that they've accumulated with a large sample size of defensive presence that people should really take serious. And just in case you are wondering, like, oh man, what are these impressive wins that I may be referring to? Detroit beat the Knicks, Rockets, and Clippers, but the most impressive wins have to be against the Boston Celtics back in February 26, and just recently they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they did so by putting up 133 points. Very, very impressive. Earlier this year, we did make a video talking about the Pistons. However, that was a more Cade-centric video talking about the growth, development, and maturation of the 6'6" guard that has really organized and pieced this offense together, especially in the absence of Jaden Ivey, who I personally believe would really make this offense take a whole nother leap, because Cade, with his limitations, especially when it comes to shooting and being an explosive guard, he needs a combo guard alongside him, which I think will be a perfect fit with him and Jaden in the backcourt. So that is something that will be missed until he comes back, and there does seem to be some signs that he might make an appearance for postseason play. But until then, I think that a lot of his absence has actually done wonders for Cade as a ball handler, passer, playmaker, decision maker in this offense. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have his faults, because he still is limited in terms of his passing ability, especially some of the high leverage passes. But nevertheless, the numbers really do speak for themselves, especially since January. Cade has been averaging 27 points, 9 assists, 5 to 6 rebounds. The turnovers are still there, but shooting splits of 47, 35, and 89 are all very much so impressive. The one thing that I have noticed with Cade over the last couple of months now is his willingness and acceptance of double teams to make easier reads, because those pocket passes still aren't there yet. Skip passes still are a little bit out of control from time to time, even though I do see some improvements. But the one thing I've noticed out of him, instead of trying to, ride the defense and make the pocket pass, what he tends to do is just accept accept the double team and use his height and length to read over the double team and make certain reads, which I do believe is probably the best way for him to leverage himself against the defense. And those are all things that are really, really great. However, this video cannot just be about Cade. Even though I do believe he's probably going to make an All-NBA team, he's probably going to win Most Improved Player of the Year, which, you know, I have my own thoughts about that. But this video cannot just be about Cade because it will be doing a massive disservice to everyone else on this roster. And I don't want anyone to believe heading into the playoffs that this is just a Cade-led team. No, 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 no. First, shout out to Malik Beasley. He's having an amazing shooting season, attempting 9 threes a game, converting them at a 42% clip. And he's at a point right now where he's more than likely going to finish the season not only leading the NBA for the most made threes, but cracking that 300 made three threshold for a year, putting him on a very short list of players that predominantly is made up of Clay and Steph, but still a very impressive list to be on for a shooter. And the things he's been able to do for this offense is very, very impressive, especially in the absence of Jaden Ivey. And I do believe a player like Malik Beasley is exactly who you needed to surround Cade with all season long last year. It was a huge reason why Cade couldn't make the proper progression and development in his game because he didn't have the proper floor spacing. But this offense isn't really made up of just Cade and Malik Beasley shooting. A lot of it has to do with grit and grind, offensive rebounding, and up and down tempo that is really being pushed by the amount of defensive pressure that you can feel from this team. And if anything, that has probably been the biggest difference maker from this year's team and last year's team, and quite frankly is the biggest identifier for this team as well. And this is where, you know, again, a lot of really great players. You know, Dennis Schroeder, he's been on his team. He's had some really good moments as well. Lindy Waters, he's on his team as well. Shout out to him out in Golden State. And now with the Pistons, he's been amazing, converting his shots 41% from behind the arc. He's been really, really great. This is where we have to kind of really lock in now for a second, right? We're going to talk about some defense, right? That brother, Asar Thompson, he's something else. I don't, the things in which the Thompson twins do, it's crazy. I was watching footage preparing for this video because I don't like to just come up here and just talk willy-nilly to you all, especially when it comes to things you have to watch like defense. This brother, Asar Thompson, and his twin, they are something. The things that they do to NBA players does not make any sense. The effort, the attention to detail, the wingspan, the athleticism, it's all there. They are literally some of the greatest defensive players I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. The way that Asar hawks players, and he does it routinely, the way he gives extra effort once a player passes him, still getting after him, going for the block, going for the steal. You can clearly tell the level of attention to detail when it comes to his ability to pick up players, especially in pick and roll sets. He knows where players like to be. He knows their counters. He knows when they like to pick up the ball and make certain reads. He knows it. He knows it all. And I know he knows this because I've witnessed him and his twin and a lot of those other players in Overtime Elite because it's in Atlanta and I'm based in Atlanta and I've seen them behind the scenes. Bro, the amount of footage that they were watching is absurd. Asar on this team with Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. The ceiling is through the roof. It should be illegal to have that type of defense on the floor with one another. And I'm not even trying to do my best Stephen A. Smith impersonation right now because I know I'm being very theatrical. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you think you're about to go into a playoff series with someone who's supposed to be your passer, playmaker, and decision maker, and they don't have their handles on point, it's going to be a long series. And this is where I will say it. The Boston Celtics, you better figure it out soon because Jason Tatum cannot be the only player making the reads and decision making for this team. If you are Dame, this will be another Drew Holiday situation for you. You better figure it out. If you are a team that has not figured out your screening and your pick and roll situations and making sure you do not hang out your guards to dry, you better figure it out. I've seen Asar pick apart James Harden, and Harden is a magician in pick and roll sets. It's amazing. Then you have Isaiah Stewart, crash out dummy. I get it. But Stewart, so far this season, amongst all players who've contested 4 or more shots at the rim on a game-to-game basis, second in the NBA, only behind Chet Holmgren, holding opposing teams 42% at the rim. Let me repeat that again. 42% at the rim. Everyone is lucky that this man cannot stay on the floor longer because the things in which he does is ridiculous. And Jalen Duren, also very impressive rim protector as well. But the thing that's even more impressive about Duren and Stewart is that they can move their feet. They're laterally quick. Stewart, it makes sense because he's not a real big. He's like 6'8", right? So he's the size of a lot of wings. So he has the ability to kind of move his feet. But the defensive flexibility, the versatility that is there as well, forcing turnovers, getting people in uncomfortable situations, the blitzing, the handling of opposing teams' ball handlers. Those are the difference makers. And again, I've seen this quite often, especially in the Eastern Conference, when a lot of teams are not properly prepared for that playoff defense to switch. You have another thing coming for you. If you think you're about to just walk into anywhere where Detroit is across the aisle from you, and you think you're about to get off that offense that you were getting off in the regular season, it's not going to happen. And it's the biggest reason why this team has been the second best defense for over 40 games now. They're relentless. They're tenacious. They get after it. They turn you over. And I'm not just talking about turning over the ball. They turn over ball handlers, make it difficult for them. And if they can stop the snake of the offense, they will make sure they manage everything else in that back line as well with Stewart and Jalen Duren. You have to not fall for it. And so, yes, I do believe there are still very clear limitations. The floor spacing isn't there. There's a reason why Isaiah Stewart doesn't play as many minutes as he normally does, because he's not someone who really provides a lot of value offensively. He also fouls a lot. I think that if this is a team that has to rely on Tobias Harris in postseason minutes, I think that's going to be a problem. Even though I think Tobias in spurts has been really solid for this team, that is going to be a problem for this roster as well. And I do believe Cade is going to provide a level of limitations offensively that will inevitably be their demise, because as great as this team is defensively, offensively, it does really concern me. I'm actually surprised that Malik Beasley has gone this long shooting this well from three. How much that's going to translate in the postseason, who knows? Is there going to be anyone else that is going to join him for the ride in terms of floor spacing, or at least enough floor spacing for the Pistons? Who knows as well? Most of their ability to overcome their limitations, again, has been offensive rebounding, transition play, and being able to kind of just make the most of whatever the defense is giving you, which a lot has been mid-range shooting, in which Cade has really been good at. Shout out to Asar Thompson, very similar to his brother. They somehow just manifest these points out of nowhere, thin air, thanks to their athleticism and being able to attack certain weak points of the offense, especially when they're playing in zone. I think those are also really key moments for this team and what they've been able to muster up offensively throughout many of these games in which they've struggled in. And so those are all things that are very, very much true. But I genuinely believe that this is a team that could win solely based off of defense. They can go into series, and if you are a team that is struggling on the offensive side of the floor, it's going to look significantly worse when you have to match up against a team like this. They rotate really well. They get after it. They box out. They rebound at like 3 or 4 different positions, so they don't overly depend on just 1 or 2 players. They actually do rebound throughout the entire team. And more importantly, they just give a damn. They actually give a lot of effort, which is why it was very frustrating to hear Shaq claim that this team is boring and no one should really watch them. Because if anything, if anyone has a problem with today's NBA, the amount of 3-point shooting, lack of effort defensively, how oriented offensively a lot of these teams are, then all of that really goes out the window when it comes to the Pistons. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They're not offensive oriented, and they actually give a damn defensively. They have several players on the defensive side of the floor that will force players in opposing teams in bad situations, and they take advantage of it every single time. Shout out to JB Bickerstaff out there. He has really gotten the most out of a lot of these players. Shout out to Cade Cunningham for the growth and development that he has had. But shout out to this defense that is being led by Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, and Asar Thompson. Don't allow last year to get you mixed up. Don't allow the first 20 to 30 games of this year to get you mixed up. Who this team truly is what we've seen in the last 40-some games, and it's the reason why a lot of people are trying to wake a lot of Eastern Conference teams up, because this is the team, and Orlando. Those are the 2 teams that could really upset a lot of the teams in the Eastern Conference. I'm looking at you, Milwaukee. I'm looking at you, Indiana. Looking at you, New York. I don't think none of those 3 teams are secure. So look alive and be aware, and don't be surprised if the Pistons can find themselves in the second round of the playoffs, because it could look that way depending on how things shake up. But yo, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.